This school has really met a long series of challenges and hardships through the years and overcome them all through strong leadership, through perseverance and determination, hard work, faith, creativity, and also a lot of sacrifice on the parts of a great many people. And something that is especially unique about this institution as far as its very roots, its very founding, and that is with the missionary couple that were really responsible for developing what is Ottawa University today. That missionaries couple is the Reverend Jotham and Eleanor Meeker, and they came to what we now call Kansas in 1833. I usually think of the beginning birth date of what eventually grew into Ottawa University as being the day in June in 1837, in which the Meekers, with 2 wagons and 2 days of traveling across soggy prairies, they rolled up on the banks of the Meridazine River in front of a really crude, very humble log hut. What transpired during the next 18 years of living down here with the Ottawas is really a remarkable story. Meeker sought to serve as minister and teacher. He served as their doctor eventually, and also their interpreter and spokesman. Provided food, clothing, and shelter when they were destitute. He also sought to make it possible for them to learn to read and write in their own language for the very first time and to have printed materials in the Ottawa language available to them. He taught classes of reading, writing, and arithmetic. He saw to it that dozens of Indian children were provided with elementary educations and taught trade skills at other mission schools. He was able to repeatedly demonstrate that he trusted the Ottawa, and they in turn then came to trust him. And when he passed away, the leadership was really pretty devastated. They said that they would never have another friend like him. They are indeed, though, the ones in which really prepared the soil and planted the seeds and developed this relationship with the Ottawa Indians that Ottawa University then later grew out of. There was another individual who was sort of the Indian trader, sort of a part-time preacher, and his name was John Tecumseh Jones. He was adopted into the Ottawa tribe. He was known as Atoe Jones, and sort of abbreviated to Toy Jones. Jones, though, is the one who gets credited for being a spokesperson for the Ottawa tribe and their interest in furthering education for members of the Ottawa tribe, and especially the children. There was a tentative effort made to establish a college in 1860 that they chartered, but the Civil War interrupted. There were all sorts of guerrilla warfare and killings and troops traipsing through the Ottawa Reserve lands, etc. But there is then a new charter established in April of 1865, just days after the Civil War ends and Lincoln's assassination. This is the charter for what they now call Ottawa University, and it's what we celebrate every April as Charter Day. The plan out of that was that the Ottawas were going to give 20,000 acres of their land to be sold, and the money raised from that was going to be what started the new infant college. What occurred next is the worst, most tarnished part of Ottawa University's history. There were land sales then to sell off this land for the money to be turned into the school. The interesting thing was that there wasn't much oversight. There wasn't much accounting, and bit by bit the land sort of got sold and nobody seemed to know where the money went. Later investigations never provided a very distinctive answer about that, but it was pretty clear that the Ottawas had gotten the short end of the stick. Things really turned around, though, when Reverend Robert Atkinson came out. He was sent out by the Baptist Home Missionary Board in 1869, and he's the one that really saved the development of the school and got it back on a solid footing. He oversaw the completion of the college building in that same year, 1869. He fought off efforts to have the school moved elsewhere. He really helped clean up the act. The next really stellar person to come onto the scene as far as leadership was Dr. Milan Ward, who came out in 1869 and was put in charge of the school under Atkinson. He became known as the grand old man of Ottawa University for a very good reason. He served as the academic head at times. He served as the president. He taught mathematics, Greek, and Latin. He did everything clear down to, at times, sweeping the floors. He's really the one who was responsible for putting it up on a higher academic level. In 1879, there were all of 2 teachers. By the 1880s, they had a preparatory department and more college-level courses. 1884 is the year that the Ottawa campus was first founded. It's significant to note that because it is the oldest student publication in the state of Kansas and has been published ever since then. There was a second building built by 1893, and that was the north half of what is now the administration building. There were also a couple of other frame buildings that were developed on campus around the turn of the century. A new pinnacle for the university occurred in 1902 when they added on the rest of this structure, greatly enhancing the size of the administration building, and it was the new crown jewel, not only for obviously the campus, but for the city of Ottawa as well. It caught fire and burned down the night before its dedication. But again, the president at the time insisted that you could not burn out a college, and they started the laborious process of, again, trying to rebuild, which they did within the next couple of years. By 1914, they had expanded enough as far as student body and so forth that they were wanting to build a new gymnasium. The male students on campus chipped in, and they all went out with shovels, and they dug the foundation for putting in what is now called the Commons Building. And so that eventually became sort of the student union for Ottawa University for many years. Another very, very difficult, scary time was, of course, the stock market crash in 1930. With the crash, the enrollment went down to 225 students, but there was such a commitment and determination to see it through that there was great emphasis placed on making whatever sacrifices were necessary to make sure that the college survived. And as a result, even though teachers weren't getting paid, they were staying on their posts and keeping the classroom doors open. The other aspect that came during the Depression that was a real boost for the university was the hiring of a new president from Ireland by the name of Dr. Andrew B. Martin. He was president from 1935 until, I think, 1968, the longest tenure of any president that Ottawa University has ever had. They weathered the Depression. They also weathered World War II. And it was a period of tremendous growth academically, financially, students, buildings on campus. There was a lot of wonderful things that transpired during the leadership of Dr. Martin. He said that the college must be Christian, cultural, contemporary, and comprehensive. True education really can't exist split into individual little sections or subjects, but must be integrated around a more central purpose. Through the decades since then, there have still been financial woes, things that have created emergencies. This was especially the case after there had been great expansion and booming and building of dormitories and so forth with the baby boom. But then when that began to taper off in the 70s, there were again great financial hardships. The faculty unanimously suspended their own tenure so that the administration could make the wisest, most logical cuts. They gave up their own job security so that the good of the institution would be met and that the college again would survive. There's certainly been lots of other wonderful things, though, that have happened in the years since then. And what's most remarkable, I think, is really fulfilling the potential of the college in becoming a true university with the development of the branch campuses in Kansas City, in Phoenix, in Wisconsin, in Indiana, in Southeast Asia. It's really been a remarkable venture that I think a lot of the early founders and leaders would admire and be very, very impressed with what Ottawa University has become. But one of the unique aspects, I think, also that is very, very special about this institution is what we call the Ottawa spirit. And that can be illustrated in a lot of different ways, from the way in which they have, through the decades, really met these challenges over and over again and overcome them with leadership and hard work and faith and perseverance and sacrifice. That's part of the Ottawa spirit. But it's also part of the spirit of what is developed on campus in the rapport and the relationships between the faculty and the students, between everyone that is a part of the Ottawa community and the family. Very, very strong, sound, wonderful friendships, partnerships that have been very meaningful to thousands of people. And you don't even have to know somebody from your Ottawa days. If you just know that they're an Ottawa grad, there's a real connectedness. My first introduction to the Ottawa spirit, it's the first time I ever remember being on this campus. I was just a little kid. My recollection is it was the dedication of the chapel. I was there with my parents, and at the end of it, everybody stood up and they began singing all 4 verses of a hymn that I was dumbfounded I had never heard of before. My parents standing next to me were singing all 4 verses by memory. I had never heard this hymn, and they knew every single word. And it started out, "Sweet alma mater, as thou hast cherished me, so will I cherish thee, my Ottawa." And I thought, surely this has to be a special place. And indeed it is.